Hello, I'm Scott Soshnick.
And I'm Evan Novi-Williams, and this is the Mavericks Mayhem sports business podcast, the Sporticast.
Evan, I think our entire listening audience was at the March of Dimes luncheon.
Yep.
I mean, you know, lots of people coming up to both of us. Hey, I love the podcast. Listen to the podcast. You know, I think that was our group right there. They were all in one room. We should have done a live episode right there.
We should have a designated survivor. One listener had to stick around in the back just in case something terrible happened. Yeah.
The minority whip.
Exactly.
All right, give me Mavericks Mayhem. What did you started there?
Yeah,
Mavericks Mayhem. Yeah.
It's the biggest story in sports business this week, Scott.
Yeah.
And you and I had a pretty crazy Tuesday evening.
I can't tell you. I'm going to admit to doing something that I'm not proud of. You know, I'm sorry, but sometimes situations warrant, and then I already told you sort of the after effects, but I was doing a lot of texting and driving and calling and driving on the way to hockey practice, and I was doing some follow-up calls after practice, and I told you, and I was looking forward to getting home because focus group of one had to get to bed and whatever, but I was on a phone call, and I was just driving. Like I'm talking and I'm driving and and all of a sudden I see a road sign from Monticello. I was 20 miles past my exit. What should have been a 1 hour drive home was a 2 hour drive home. I was so mad at myself.
It's funny how both of us did this yesterday. In the heat of the moment, I also essentially totally blew off my co-op board annual meeting. my co-op board.
Well, you were presenting at the meeting. That's the word.
Yeah,
you could miss a meeting, but you were
had
presenting.
A whole thing breaking down everything that we had gone through in the past year at the building. Didn't get to do any of it because I was an hour.
Well, my favorite is you got a phone call with somebody saying, "Where are you?"
Yeah, like what's going on? I was like, I totally forgot. Let's get to the news, the end result,
Mark
and we can
Cuban
back up
didn't
a little
forget.
bit. Exactly. Sheldon.
Well, let's take it by stage.
Widow,
Let's take it by stage, though.
Yeah.
At first, the Adelsons had to put out. You know, there was a filing saying that they're selling $2 billion worth of Sand stock to acquire a controlling stake of a professional sports team, and then the race was on. Like that,
and
was
not just
fun.
to acquire it, with a binding purchase agreement done to acquire a binding stake. The release, which came SEC filing from Sands, said that they were selling $2 billion plus they were going to use other cash on hand to buy this majority stake of an unnamed sports team. Immediately, you and I jump on the phones. There's a lot of speculation. We have a list in our heads of teams that are for sale or could be for sale. Would not surprise us. I think you and I both kind of ran through a number of those teams very quickly. There are teams in the Vegas area where the Adelson family is that possibly made sense. We cleared those out as well. Dallas Mavericks got not high on my list. I don't think high on your list either, of teams that seemed most likely to potentially trade a majority stake in 2023.
If you took the big four sports, and the only reason I guess we didn't think it was MLS, even though the Adelson family loves soccer. Yeah. Just the numbers didn't work. Like you wouldn't need $2 billion for control stake, the whole thing. So I immediately, and we thought, by the way, not enough for the NFL. I immediately went to NBA in my head. So I was kind of racking my brain as to which team that could be. But if you had me list all NBA teams and the likelihood that it was them on the other side here, the sell side, boy, I mean, after like Knicks and Lakers, I mean, the Mavericks would have been in the bottom third of my list.
Few owners are as publicly tied to their teams, I think, as Mark Cuban is in Dallas with the Mavericks. Few owners seem to enjoy being owner more than Mark Cuban is.
Yes,
Dallas.
But now, hold on, if we had been given terms that we know now, what if I said to you, okay, the Adelsons are coming in, they're going to inject $3.5 billion, whatever, but the sell side owner will retain control of operations. Yeah. It's really hard to really know objectively what you would have done because we know too much now. But I really would have, I think, knowing myself, I think the Mavericks would have gone in the top quarter for me. I would have said, wait a minute, that would give liquidity to Mark Cuban. And if you don't think that there's a long-term casino component, new arena component here, you're out of your mind. Then you don't understand how the market works. This would certainly be you're bringing in an investor here with solid ties to the gaming community in the Sands Corporation. And we don't have betting yet in Texas, so you can expound on that. But I really think, you know what? Liquidity for Cuban, control of the basketball operations. This could be him. Age 65, I think he's 65. He backed off from Shark Tank a week ago. I know Mark likes to spend a lot of time with his family. I'm like, this really could be Mark Cuban. And, hell, it was.
Totally. I don't want to speculate on potential reasons here. I see a lot. Who knows what's going on in his personal life? If he needs the money for something else, if there's another transaction or acquisition he wants to make, if he's bearish on the NBA post coming out of these next TV
If you
deals,
can't speculate here, where can you speculate?
I just roll my eyes a lot at seeing.
Hey, listen, I emailed Mark and he didn't email back.
X
Tough.
And Y out
Well, he
there.
did tell NBC News, but he did tell NBC he wasn't interested or wasn't planning a run for president. So you can cross that one off the list.
Okay, yeah,
does not surprise me at all.
Off the list. But I do want to talk about you brought up the gambling stuff. I do think that's really interesting. The Texas is one of those few states left still that has no land-based casinos and no online sports betting. Both of those things have been pushed in various attempts through the Texas legislature recently. I believe the land-based resort and casino failed to make it out of the House during the last legislative session. Sports betting made it out of the House but failed in the Senate. The Texas legislature meets once every 2 years, not a bad gig. So the process in some ways gets drawn out a lot more than other states. But Texas is a huge state population-wise. It is obvious to see that if and when Texas legalizes any of these forms of gambling, whether it's online sports betting, whether it is land-based casino, there is a huge opportunity there. And Las Vegas Sands, it's in the name, Las Vegas centric, but has been very open and vocal about trying to build out its portfolio outside of Nevada. And Texas is the dream. Texas and California and Florida are the dream states to make that happen.
Eben, bring your brain to the forefront here and explain to the listening audience, if they do not understand the term market access, why don't you tell them what a market access deal is, because teams have already tried it.
Yeah, it's really interesting, especially in Texas, which I know is why you're asking. In a few states, Ohio, Arizona, I think are the only two right now, they legalize sports betting through teams. So giving teams the license, which teams then sell for huge amounts of money to a gambling partner to make that happen. The way that Texas sports betting has been discussed is that if and when Texas legalizes sports betting, it will also run through the teams. That is a huge financial concession for the teams. It is a dream situation, especially in a state like Texas, which, as we said, is going to be a massive gambling market if and when it is allowed. And we've already seen this in Texas, Scott. That there have been some teams that have signed deals that included future rights to the gambling license if and when it happens. When DraftKings did its deal for Golden Nugget's online business, Golden Nugget was owned by Tillman Fertitta, owner of the Rockets. I believe part of that deal included DraftKings was going to have the market access rights through the Rockets if and when Texas came on board for sports betting. So imagine if this deal does include this majority stake that the Adelsons are getting in the Mavericks, if that includes the potential sports betting license that the Mavericks would hold if Texas legalizes sports betting in that way, that is also a tremendously valuable piece for the Adelsons, especially if they think that they can, through their lobbying, through their connections, through their money, accelerate the process to make that happen. So I do think there is no question that on the buy side here, the gambling opportunities in Texas is, I'm sure, a large part of the thinking here.
You know that real estate development is a way to spur action. You know, we saw that with Barclays Center, not quite the original project, but you saw that with Bruce Ratner and Barclays Center in Brooklyn. If I close my eyes and think of Steve Cohen, and I will close my eyes right now, and hear Steve Cohen describing what it's like at Willets Point right now, you know, plays for hubcaps and catalytic converters. But he has come out with his grand plan, and shockingly, guess what it includes, Mr. Novi Williams?
A downstate casino.
A downstate casino, yeah, with a bunch of entities vying for casino licenses in New York. So here we are, and entertainment districts are very popular with sports teams. Mark Cuban would like to have his own state-of-the-art arena attached to a casino project and some retail and maybe hotel. That's how it goes these days, right? What do we talk about all the time? The tent poles. What are the tent poles? Real estate is a big one of them. And casino is, I think, one that's quickly deserved its own spot as well.
A couple other things that I do want to mention here. The price valuation, $3.5 billion. Again, this is for a majority stake, but not a controlling stake, which is a little bit of an important nuance here.
Well, a controlling stake, just not control.
Controlling stake, just not
a controlling
not control.
stake, just not control. Right.
Yeah, the arena obviously is a factor here too. But if you think of the LP discount as roughly 20%, that if 100% of the Mavericks sold right now, it would be something in the low 4 range. Makes total sense to me. So the money doesn't make sense there again for not for control and not for the arena. This is still a very large number, one of the largest team sales we've ever seen, valuation-wise, we've ever seen in sports, let alone in the NBA. That seems worth mentioning to me. Another thing, Scott, just on the timing here, the NBA is in the process of starting its next round of TV negotiations. As we've seen in other sports and in the NBA, valuations tend to jump pretty significantly when the new 2x or 3x TV deal gets signed.
Yeah, I think we're more than a bounce pass away from that one, though. I don't think that's
and maybe that's true.
We know where it's going.
Mark Cuban has been maybe the most vocal NBA owner in terms of talking about the NBA's prospects versus the NFL, the hogs get fat and pigs get slaughtered comment that he made a number of years ago. I do think the timing
that's
here
what I liked what we see with analysts.
At least
though.
a little interesting.
Yeah, the problem with those comments is you have to wait a long time to see if people are right or wrong.
Yeah.
On this one, Mark, man, you got this one Mark got wrong. Whether another 5, 10, 20 years, that'll be true of the NFL.
At some point he might be right. Yeah.
At some point he might be right, but he ain't right now. That was for sure. Ask Josh Harris about the slaughter. He just paid $6 billion for a franchise in the nation's capital.
Yeah,
so what do you think would have happened if you and I, let's say, 48 hours ago, went to a lot of the bankers who work in this area and said, hey, you know what? I'm hearing that there's a sale done where for X billions of dollars, the person's not going to get control of operations. But they'll have control of what we just said. They'll have a controlling stake, but they won't have control. Would anybody have thought of a scenario in which, okay, wait a minute, this is a vehicle to a casino, blah, 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 blah? I think no.
Yeah, maybe
I don't think anybody would have predicted or seen this coming or coming up with a scenario.
And there's a chance that we're reading too much into this as well. I think probably not, but maybe they just had a good relationship with Mark and they wanted an NBA team. Maybe it includes path to control at some point in the future, right? I imagine there is, whenever Mark decides he does not want to run this team anymore, I imagine the Adelsons will have the right to
the controlling owner, absolutely,
of course, yeah. But you're right. I think there is, as we see often with other acquisitions, there's a bigger business play in mind, and it's not difficult to read the tea leaves on this that gambling is the thing, even though right now none of it is an option legally in Texas, and who knows? Again, the legislature meets every 2 years, and every setback is a 2-year setback and not a 1-year setback, which is a different situation than in most states. You know what, though, as an investor, do you care if it's 1 year, 2 year, 3 year, 4 year? I mean, what did Wayne Gretzky say? You want to say it as an investor? Skate to where the puck is going to be.
Skate to where the puck is going to be, not where it is. That's what the Adelsons and the Sands Corporation are doing in this deal. They are skating to where the puck is going to be. You know what else is a bit of a risk and reward? The big dollars that are paid to coaches. Sometimes it works out, sometimes it does not. Jimbo Jumbo we've talked about, but Mr. Bodenhausen came out with his list of the highest paid coaches. I'm taking a quick scan of the top here. There's a whole lot of losing records here. I'm like, what am I to make of that? Just in the same way that recent performance on the court does not make a
team's valuation go up or down. Recent success by coaches doesn't necessarily correlate exactly to how much they're getting paid. There's so many other factors that go into this. Scott, there are according to Kurt, 37 coaches across the major U.S. pro leagues and college ranks that are making more than $8 million a year in base salary. This should not surprise people as we talk about the hog that's not getting slaughtered. Vast majority of them are football coaches. The 20 of the top 25 are either NFL or college football coaches. There's one college basketball coach in there, Bill Self, who just got that new deal, a couple NBA coaches as well. So it is a football dominated list right here.
Yeah, but here's the little difference though. Bill Self, you and I talked about the fact, what leverage did Bill Self have to get this lifetime crazy number? Was somebody going to pay him? Like you and I think we agree where we're like, no, they didn't have to do this. They bidding against themselves. Number one on the list is Bill Belichick.
Yep.
Do I think another NFL team might have really upbid here to get Bill Belichick away from the? I at least I can see a world in which he would generate enough interest and demand where the Patriots say we got to pay him, the $25 million he's getting to keep him.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting question. I would say that college football and some college basketball coaches are in some ways the leverage kings in this scenario, right? That they become these cult of personality. Bill Belichick has kind of done this, certainly has done this as well in New England. But
I'm not going to sing, but I would because you said cult of personality, one of my favorite songs. I'm not going to do it though.
By all means, warm up those pipes, Scott. It happens in the pros a little bit, but way more often it's college coaches that become kind of larger than the programs themselves, and I think that is leverage in and of itself. And Bill Self has definitely done that. A lot of the college football coaches on this list, like Nick Saban and Dabo Swinney, also reach that point where you're right. The leverage of another job may not be a huge thing, but just the amount of control and power that they have consolidated on their campuses and the way in which fans feel about them, even if they have a down year, in some ways I think gives them a lot more leverage than the equivalent professional coach probably does. The turnover in college, in professional ranks, Lev Akabas, our colleague, put out these charts, the tenure of NFL and NBA coaches. And the majority of coaches in both those leagues, Scott, have been in their jobs for two or fewer years, right? The turnover there is so tight. Whereas there's just so many at the top tier of college football coaches that have been there for so much longer, right? They become institutions, they become businesses in their own right. So while I agree that the leverage for Bill Self is a little different in terms of what other jobs, in some ways he has so much leverage because Bill Self is Kansas basketball. It is almost impossible to extricate the two things. Whereas in pro sports, it's a lot easier.
Yeah, I get it. I go back to Gordon Gee at Ohio State. Remember the big quote when he was asked about me and punish the coach or whatever?
Tressel.
Was that Jim Tressel? Yeah. And what did he say?
Tressel.
He goes, I just hope he doesn't fire me. Like the school president should not be saying, I just hope the football coach does not fire me.
Exactly. And there are some professional coaches that have that kind of power. Bill Belichick and Greg Popovich, the two longest tenured coaches in the NBA and NFL, I would say are at that level, but it's way more common to have that kind of dynamic in college basketball and college football than it is in the professional ranks.
Best gig in the pro ranks might be coach to David Tepper. That might be the gig you want because you're
best gig or worst gig.
No, best gig because you're going to get paid a whole lot of money not to coach.
Gotcha. Yeah. What I mean,
he's paying $2.
It's pretty wild what's going on in Carolina. Since David Tepper bought the Panthers 5 years ago, there are only two professional sports teams in the major four leagues that have a worse win-loss percentage than the Panthers do. I believe it's the Detroit Pistons, also have a very high-paid coach, and the New York Jets. And David Tepper fired Frank Reich earlier this week, went on a very kind of public profanity tirade about his frustrations. As we talk about, Scott, this list that you and I have in our head of teams that if they hit the market, we would not be surprised. The Panthers come up in conversations, at least in my conversations, a lot, as a team that bought pretty recently and for a pretty high number at the time, but David could sell that team right now for a multi-billion-dollar profit, probably.
Yep.
And it certainly seems like he's frustrated with the process, both publicly and from conversations that I've had. One of those teams that it would not shock me, unlike the Mavericks, which shocked me, would not shock me if the Panthers hit the market at some point soon.
Look at you. Yeah, I mean, it's just a dichotomy in sort of David Tepper, the investor, where he showed a lot of patience and sort of understood, hey, I bet the U.S. government will bail out failing banks. So made a lot of money in that regard. But here he's shown very little patience for losing, and the NFL is a different animal. Like what works in your core discipline may not work here. You got to figure it out.
And there's so much kind of collaboration or power that you cede as an NFL owner as part of the greater entity, which is not something you have when you run a successful hedge fund, right? You are the king of the universe in that world, and you can make all the decisions. And NFL owners very often have to kind of put their own personal interests aside for the greater interest of the NFL. It's one of the things that's made the NFL over the past century such a successful business is decisions made and concessions made by some owners taking money out of their own pocket in the short term to the benefit of the league more broadly and the business model of the league. So yeah, from what I understand, there's been some challenges in terms of going from a world where he is the sole decision maker and can make all of the decisions, going into a very exclusive club where there is some collaboration that is required and kind of baked into the process.
I like when our sort of back of napkin polling and focus grouping works out. We talked about what happened in our respective festivities in terms of watching TTV and whether or not we were watching the streaming the Jets game. And my answer was no. Nobody was watching the Jets at our celebration. I believe your answer was the same. And the numbers seem to side with us, that people were doing other things. I'm a little surprised too, but it looks as if our focus groups were on point.
The numbers for the first Amazon Black Friday game, 9.6 million people average watched it. That is a lower number than the average for the exclusive Thursday night Amazon games this season.
When everybody's home. Yeah, everybody's home thinking about football.
Our colleague Jacob Feldman was positing that part of this is a time of day thing, that obviously the Thursday night games happen in nighttime, prime time, when people are not working, and this was a Friday game where some people were working, and it also started at 3:00 in the middle of the day where people aren't used to NFL games being played. You and I have discussed that the NFL is not allowed to broadcast games on television, at least after majority of the game after 6 p.m. on Fridays as part of its antitrust exemption. So the league is not allowed to play a Black Friday game, at least not the way that it's broadcasting them right now. Not allowed to do that after any much later than 3 p.m. on Black Friday. Amazon and the league have said they want to do this again. I imagine they will do it again.
They'll do it again. Sure.
Yeah, I'm not saying this was not successful, but I was surprised by the number here. I would have thought it would have been over $10 million, and it does at least open the door to the question of is there a point where the NFL has too many windows? Is there a point where there's oversaturation? Is there a point where the league can't just continue to create a new 9 a.m. Sunday or a Thursday night or now a standing Black Friday game? At some point, is there too much NFL football?
Or Eben Novy-Williams, is there a point at which Americans cannot be deterred from Black Friday just absolutely checking out every item of every aisle in Costco? That's the real
Speaking
question.
Into my soul right there.
Are they following the Novy-Williams model where every item in every aisle in Costco is just being looked at? That's the question.
And comparing the prices to the cans of chickpeas at my local bodega and deciding that yes, the pallet of 16 cans of chickpeas is a worthwhile purchase for me.
I can use this on all my salad. I will absolutely utilize all of this.
Exactly. I'm saving $3 a can, and then I'm driving it back from DC, so there's gas involved. What does that cost? Doing all of the calculations there.
This is the Kramer mail truck scheme on Seinfeld.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah.
All right. So we were both surprised by the number. I think even with whatever's going on, I would still say I am surprised at the headline we saw about Sports Illustrated. Coming out of that report where they were using AI-generated authors, and the SI is saying it was a third party. The business part of this, is that the parent company, the Arena Group of SI, has been taking a hit.
Yeah, this is such an interesting story and a bit more nuanced, I think, than a lot of people who have casually read the headlines. These were not AI-generated gamers or even AI-generated sports features. These were
just fake reporters.
They were buying guides, essentially, which I think kind of opens up a really interesting conversation about media, which you are
Why
hip
do you
deep
need
in
a
right
reporter
now.
to write it? Just say staff, SI staff, SI
100%,
whatever.
right? Like these are silly buying guides. They're probably SEO plays more so than they are actual content for the website.
Search engine optimization.
Search engine optimization. And you're right. This could easily be done by SI staff or SI robot, whatever you want to call it, and not creating fake bios with fake biographical details.
That, by the way, we're there for the world to
and
see. You could go buy these.
And shout out to Futurism, the media site that broke this news. Essentially looked at the photos of some of these authors and traced them back to
I know
fake
this guy.
headshot websites.
Yeah, I know this guy.
Fake AI generated photo websites that were for sale. So there is obviously an embarrassment here for SI. Do not use AI generated content and pass it off as if a human did it. I think that is obviously an ethical breach in addition to maybe a number of other problems. But I also think the way that so much of media operates now, right, is trying to put out as much content out there that does well for search engine optimization, and buying guides and products and e-commerce and all these things are all crashing together. There's going to be a lot more AI generated buying guides and things like this in the future. SI was not the first; it's not going to be the last. But I do think we can all agree that the way in which they did it was problematic.
Yes, we can. All right, now I'm quickly, while you were talking, I was doing my phone tapping, which is good because I do love the song, so I'm going to play it out and give it like 5 seconds of music, and then you can close the show. Hold on, let me hit the button. Oh, are we playing? Hold on, I hit the button and it went somewhere else. There we go.
Ooh.
Great. It's a great song.
Scott Soshnick playing that music at Soshnick on Twitter. I am Evan Novi Williams at Novi_Williams on Twitter. The show is produced by Aaron Greenewald. Thank you very much to Aaron. Sportico's digital media editor Cora Veltman would like you to know that you can follow the show at Sporticast, which is the hub of the Sportico Media Network.